So, I don't know about you guys, but cool. Hello everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very, very nerdy. Some of my favorite fantasies. I brought the fun earrings back, so they're fun. So I don't know about you guys, but when I think of fall and the cozy time of year, I think of fantasies. I think of wanting to jump into fantasies. I feel like reading a lot of fantasies at this time of year. So I thought, what better time of year than to talk about some of my favorite fantasies. I haven't really done a favorites video besides like the one that I did when I first started this channel, and then I did a like romance favorites in February. So I'd love to get around to doing like favorites of all of these genres, but today I want to talk about fantasies because, like I said, it feels like the appropriate time of year. This list is probably going to change by reading more books. You know, if I came back to it in about 5, probably not even in like 2 years, I would have new things to add on to it and I would probably take some of these off. But as of my life right now, these are some of my favorite fantasies. Let's just get into talking about them. So I think the first ones I'm going to talk about are probably the ones that will stay on this list for all time. And that is Matilda by Roald Dahl, as well as The BFG by Roald Dahl. I loved Roald Dahl when I was growing up, and I still really, really like his work. And these two really stick out to me. I feel like every book lover loves Matilda, especially with like the mysterious powers she has. Honestly, like I should probably reread this one because I haven't read it in quite some time. And I feel like I've never talked about this on my channel, but I do really like Matilda, and it had to be on this list. Same with the BFG. I remember reading this in probably elementary school, and just like his powers that he has with dreams, and the fact that he's like such a teddy bear. I loved this book. This is so good, and the movie that was made a couple of years ago just reignited my love for this book again, so I do need to reread. Probably should just reread a lot of Roald Dahl books, to be honest. But these two specifically, I think, stick out because, like, they're not straight-up fantasies, but they have fantastical elements in them. And I love them. The next one is, like, I feel like the most obvious, so let's just get it out of the way. And that is the School for Good and Evil series by Soman Chainani. Why is everyone deciding to go buy the house at this exact time? This series is fabulous. I love it. If you guys have been on my channel like any length of time, I feel like you know this about me, but like I started this read, when did I start? I read this book last November. So it's only been about a year since I started reading these books. And oh my goodness, I love them. It's very fairy tale vibe, so if you do like that fairy tale type of vibe to a book, I think you will really appreciate this one. But this series basically follows two friends, Sophie and Agatha, and in the first book, they are taken off to the School for Good and Evil, which is basically split in half. It has one side for good, one side for evil, and they both think they know which side they're going to, and then basically get a swap and go to the opposite side, and just the adventures that come from them. I think it does take a lot of the like normal fairy tale tropes and turns it on their head. It gets crazy adventurous in like the last few books as well. But I adore this series so much. I love these characters. Like I love them, and like I want to go back into this world and start all over again because it was so much fun. I also highly recommend the audiobook, which is narrated by Holly Lee. They're fabulous. Are we shocked this is on here? Because I feel like we shouldn't be. The next one is one that I've only read the first two in the series, and like I love the writing style, and this is just, it's not going to change, and I feel like all of the books in the series are going to be on this list at some point, and that is the Wayward Children series, the first one being Every Heart a Doorway, and the second one being Down Among the Sticks and Bones. I am currently reading the third one in this, the Beneath the Sugar Sky, I think there's like 5 in this series out. I love her writing style. It's very atmospheric, it's very fairy tale-esque. It follows people who come into basically kind of like Alice in Wonderland, who find a doorway to a different world and feel very, very welcome and like normal in that world, and then somehow accidentally get put back into the real world and have to deal with it. And so it follows just a bunch of people. Some of these books are in worlds, like Down Among the Sticks and Bones. Some of them take place at this home for these wayward children as they try to get used to the real world again, which is like Every Heart a Doorway. I love her writing. I love that even though these books are so tiny, you get an entire story in them. I feel like nothing is rushed. I feel like the pacing is great. And these are just fun, atmospheric reads that you can just like plop into whenever you feel like. But this is good. Good. Another one that I love, actually I read a couple of years ago, and that is My Lady Jane by the Lady Janies, which are Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. And this is the first in their Lady Janies series. This one, actually I have the other two right here, but this one basically takes place in kind of a retelling and reimagining of history. It follows Lady Jane Grey, who in real life was Queen of England for like 9 days, I think, and then she was like beheaded. And so this takes that story and says, just kidding, let's put pause and redo this entire thing. And it's just very funny. I love the writing style, it's so fun. But I think my favorite part about this book is that this is during the time when like England was Protestant versus Catholic, and there were so many battles and so many discussions and fights over that. And they don't do that in this book. They basically like take a very magical element and make that the big conflict instead of Catholic versus Protestant. And I just thought that was so clever, and it gives it this just very fun twist. And I love their writing so much. It's hilarious. I have loved all the books that I have read by them. It's definitely a fantasy and has fantasy elements. And it is just fun. This is just a fun book. I love this one. This one introduced me to the series, and I love it so much. The next one is actually a very, very recent read, but I cannot stop thinking about it. So like, maybe in a couple of years this won't be on this list anymore, but it's for sure on this list right now. And that is Roaring by Lindsay Duga. I was lucky enough to receive an ARC from NetGalley for this book before it came out, and then loved it so much that I had to get my own copy. It's super shiny for some reason. But this basically takes place in the Roaring 20s, but if mythical, magical creatures were things like dragons and sirens and minotaurs and cyclopses and vampires and like all of the ridiculous creatures were real. And I loved this story because I think the world that this author has created and how these magical people become, like how they were created to be these magical things like sirens and dragons and cyclopses and all of that fun stuff. It's not fun. It's kind of actually very gruesome, but I just thought it was very, very clever because they're kind of made rather than born. And I loved that world. I loved it. I thought it was so creative. I can see why lots of people would not like this book. It's very cheesy. It has quite a lot of tropes in it, but I love it. So I had to get my own copy, and like I've already tabbed it. I don't know if y'all can see this. I went a little crazy. It was so good. The next one is one that I completely devoured when I read it. I think I finished it in like 2 or 3 days. And that is To Kill a Kingdom by Alexander Christo. This is basically like a retelling of The Little Mermaid, but if she was a siren and her mother was like the sea queen. I kind of envision her like Ursula because she's got tentacles and stuff. It's kind of a hate to love relationship in here as well. But our main character Lyra is a siren who accidentally, well, not so accidentally, murders one of her own, and as punishment her mom says, "Alright, I'm going to make you mortal and you have to bring me the heart of a prince." And so she gets turned into a mortal and goes on this ship with this prince whose one job is to hunt sirens down. And so obviously, rock in a hard place, these two people who hate each other and don't really know, well, the siren obviously knows that she's a siren, but the guy doesn't know that she's a siren, so there's a lot of conflict here. But I just loved it. I loved the writing style. I loved the storytelling. I loved the world that she created because it very much takes place on a ship. And I just got swept away. I just got swept away by these characters and this world, and I loved every second of it. So it's on this list. The next one is, I would consider it a fantasy, but it's probably more like magical realism. And that is The Shack by William Paul Young. There's this guy named Mackenzie whose daughter goes missing and is kidnapped and presumed dead. And he basically gets this random letter that says, "Come to the shack," and it's signed God. And so he goes to the shack and he spends this weekend with the Trinity, God, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And so it's very fantasy in that sense, that they've all taken on a persona, they've all taken on like a mortal body, and it's like what is real and what isn't, but it's this man's kind of discovery and journey through the weekend of how to get over a loss without losing religion, basically. And I read this for a class in college, and I just loved it. It really hit home for me, a lot of the things that they talked about in this book, and I liked it a lot. And I would consider this more fantasy than anything else, just because of some of the elements and, you know, how he actually is spending this weekend with someone who he shouldn't, like, physically he cannot spend time with. And so I thought it was great. So, like, is this a fantasy? Maybe not so much, but I'm including this in my fantasy list because it was great and I very much enjoyed it. And the very, very last one that I have to talk about is a series, another series, and that is the Cruel Prince series, which is The Cruel Prince, The Wicked King, and The Queen of Nothing, all by Holly Black. I'm putting that down because those are heavy. So I got this in an owl crate when it came out and just didn't really have any experience reading fae stories, and my only experience with Holly Black was like really, really young when I read her Spiderwick Chronicles that she wrote with that other guy that I'm blanking on. But I never really read anything by her besides that, and so I didn't really know what I was getting into. And it did take me a while to get into this one, but then I was completely sucked in, and I loved every second of it. So, like, obviously I had to go out and continue this series. And while some of the books in this series are not as great as other books, I just really like this story. I love the plot line. I love the hate to love that's in here. I love all the intrigue and the politics, and it's a very political centered book, especially the first one. With our main character, Jude, just trying to survive in this court of fairies. And so she has to do a lot of, like, mischievous and cunning things to basically not die. And I understand, like, this is not a series that everyone is going to love, but I personally am a fan of it, and yeah, I liked it a lot. Another one that I just forgot, I'm not done, I have one more that I forgot to tell you about, is A Song of Wraiths and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown. Man, I got so good at saying her name right, and then I've just gone back. But this one came out this year. I read it in June, I think, when it came out, and loved it. But this is basically a story inspired by African folklore. This follows two main characters. We have a princess and just, like, a common guy. And our guy, Malik, he is trying to get into the city, and after some weird situations, basically, his sister gets taken by a god in order to have them enter the city, and to get her back, Malik has to kill the crown princess. And of course, the other character that we follow is the crown princess, whose mother gets assassinated at the beginning of the book, and she does not feel like she is she doesn't feel like she can be queen. So she decides that she wants to bring her mother back. But in order to do that, she needs the heart of a king. So she devises this plan that there is a trial and a tournament going on, and whoever's going to win at this tournament, she will marry and therefore take his heart to bring her mother back. I loved this world. I thought it was so incredibly creative. I could have just read a book that was just about this world and the magic system and the religious system that surrounds all of these gods, and I would be very, very happy. So, I forgot to put this one on this list, but this one definitely needs to be on this list. So that is it. Those are all of the fantasies that I would consider my favorites, especially, like, right now. I'm loving all of these. So let me know if you've read any of these down below, or if you have a fantasy that you really, really love. I would love to know that as well. Give me some good recommendations. But thank you so much for watching. I really do hope that you enjoyed. And if you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you want to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media down there as well if you want to follow along on any of those. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!